When I found out the investor was Lincoln, I knew I was going to lose to Mia. She was Lincoln's first love, the one he could never forget. After the meeting ended, Lincoln chose Mia's proposal. Just as I expected, Mia looked at me and sneered. Even if you're his wife, in his heart, I'll always come first. Everything you scheme so hard to get comes effortlessly to me. She and I had been rivals since our student days, ever since her mother stole my father. And she could just as easily occupy Lincoln's heart. I glanced wearily at Lincoln in the distance, suddenly unwilling to fight Mia anymore. This time, I was giving up on him. Between Lincoln and my career, I chose my career. The company's new investor caused quite a stir among the young women, because he was incredibly handsome. The investor was Lincoln, my husband. The moment I learned this news, I knew my competition with Mia was already lost. In the break room, my colleagues were gossiping about the new investor. I bet Mia's team will get it. I heard that Lincoln's first love is Mia. Mia and Lincoln were college classmates, each other's first love. Lincoln's investment this time is all for Mia. Hearing these words made my heart tighten. I returned to my office feeling lost. News that Lincoln was the investor had already spread throughout the company. The director called Mia and me to his office. Jane, Mia, the investor for our project is Lincoln from Zenith Group. You two will each lead your teams to design a proposal. Submit them in 1 month. The director looked at Mia with meaningful appreciation. He couldn't hide. It seemed he too had heard those rumors and understood why Lincoln had chosen our company. Before I even left the office, I knew our team's design proposal would be a waste of effort. Competing against Mia, I'd likely just be there to make up the numbers. Outside the office, Mia stopped. We stood facing each other. I met her gaze. She smiled slightly. Her smile was triumphant and bold. Jane, may the best woman win yet. Her demeanor showed absolute confidence and victory, because she knew very well that between her and me, Lincoln would definitely choose her. Watching her walk away with her head held high, I turned and left. The design department erupted in excitement. If my team's design proposal was rejected, I'd spend the next period working under Mia, following my pride and accepting all her guidance. I didn't want to humble myself under her. Before the end of the workday, everyone gathered around Mia, praising her endlessly. Mia, you're amazing. I made eye contact with Mia through the crowd. She was surrounded, the center of attention. Compared to her, my corner seemed cold and desolate. I stood alone in the corner, no one beside me. She smiled at me, lips pressed together. I looked away, put on my coat and walked out. Lincoln came home. His expression was its usual cool indifference. I still couldn't help but ask Lincoln, you invested in our company? Lincoln looked up at the sound. He met my eyes briefly, his expression bland, and hummed softly in acknowledgement. I continued asking, why did you choose our company? I used a joking tone. Will you give me special treatment? Lincoln's brow furrowed slightly, his expression serious. There wasn't a trace of amusement in his eyes. After a moment's thought, he said, this was a decision by the company senior management. The proposal isn't my decision alone. The implication was that even being his wife didn't matter. I didn't ask any more questions. He was always this cold and distant, following his own rules and logic, never willing to make exceptions for me. And I always humiliated myself hoping to become his exception. Lincoln turned and left, entering his study. The study door wasn't completely closed. I could hear him talking on the phone. The voice on the other end was Mia's. Lincoln occasionally laughed softly in response to Mia. After hanging up, he pushed open the study door. He walked to the entryway and grabbed his coat from the rack. Putting on his overcoat and changing into dress shoes, he straightened up and said to me, I have a business dinner tonight. I'm going out. I nodded. He disappeared through the front door. He came home very late that night. The words I wanted to ask died in my throat after seeing the post Mia shared on social media. Mia's post showed a group photo. For people in the photo, Mia, Lincoln, and 2 of their college classmates. Seeing this photo, I realized I didn't need to ask that question. I wanted to ask Lincoln if he would favor Mia. I knew he would. I used to leave a light on for Lincoln when he came home late from business dinners. After turning off the light, I slept soundly. When I woke up, Lincoln and I didn't run into each other. We each went to our respective companies. Today, Lincoln appeared at the company as the investor director called Mia over. When Mia returned, everyone's eyes were on her. Mia is Mr. Lincoln intimidating? Mia's lips curved slightly, her answer vague and ambiguous. Mr. Lincoln and I have known each other for quite a while. He's not intimidating. Everyone can relax. Several people exchanged glances and smiled knowingly. I knew my design proposal would most likely be rejected in the end, but I still led my team working overtime, rushing to complete the design proposal. A month later, I walked into the conference room with the proposal. Everyone was present except Mia. She arrived with Lincoln. Light fell perfectly on the two of them. Lincoln occasionally bowed his head, accommodating Mia's height to hear her speak. Man's profile was illuminated, his features sharp and defined. His eyes were dark, his smile faint. In that unintentional moment, our eyes met. I wanted to read something different in his gaze. But there was nothing. Still the same cool indifference. The lottery determined the presentation order. I was before Mia. I calmly took the stage and opened my PowerPoint presentation. I explained all my design concepts and inspiration. During the presentation, I was completely focused. When I stepped down, sparse applause sounded. The most enthusiastic applause came from Nora, a young woman who had been interning with me since graduation. Lincoln showed no expression. No one could read his thoughts. The director tried to gauge the meaning in his expression. With sidelong glances, it was Mia's turn to present. She naturally made eye contact with Lincoln. They smiled at each other. Colleagues below exchanged glances with gossipy smiles. Nora leaned close to me and whispered, "Jane, is our team's proposal going to be rejected?" I pulled at the corners of my mouth, forcing a strained smile. After Mia's presentation ended, her applause was clearly much louder than mine. The director enthusiastically applauded her. Lincoln's lips curved slightly upward. There was a 30-minute break midway. Recently I've been caught up in the rumors about Lincoln and Mia, barely able to breathe. The way he looked at me was too cold, making my heart tighten. Through office gossip, I learned more about Lincoln and Mia's past. Lincoln had actively pursued Mia. He unfailingly walked her back to her dorm and brought her breakfast. All their classmates at Preston University knew how much Lincoln loved Mia. I sat motionless in my chair, watching Lincoln and Mia walk out side by side. My nose tingled. The man I'd schemed so hard to get held my most hated person in his heart. Only Nora and I remained in the conference room. Nora held my hand. The 30 minutes ended. The results were in. Lincoln and the Zenith Group team had already left. Our director announced the results. 3 votes total. All 3 votes went to Mia. When the results were announced, my eyes stung, welling with tears. I forcibly held back those tears. The director and Mia exchanged glances, expressing his approval. Several colleagues surrounded Mia. "Mia, you're incredible." I left with a lonely silhouette. But Mia chased after me. I stopped. Her eyes curved in a smile. "Even if you're his wife in his heart, I'll always come first. Everything you scheme so hard to get comes effortlessly to me." Yes. At 14, Mia could easily take Jason's love for me. Now she could occupy Lincoln's heart too. In the distance, Lincoln was ushered into the elevator by the director, his posture lazy and casual. Suddenly I felt exhausted. I didn't want to fight Mia anymore. I didn't want Lincoln either. The elevator stood still. The director, very observant, quickly called out for Mia and me to enter the elevator together. The elevator slowly descended. The director kissed up to Lincoln. "Mr. Lincoln, you and Miss Mia are a perfect match. Made for each other," others chimed in. "Exactly. I heard Mr. Lincoln and Miss Mia are already married." Mr. Lincoln really dotes on his wife, specifically choosing our company for Miss Mia. I numbly listened to these flattering words, unable to summon any reaction. Sensing a covert but burning gaze from beside me, I looked over. Lincoln's face stiffened. The director nudged my arm, hinting that I should say something too. "Jane, don't you agree? Mr. Lincoln and Miss Mia are such a perfect match?" The elevator doors opened. I calmly met Lincoln's eyes. Indeed, a perfect match. Panic flashed in his normally indifferent eyes, his thin lips parting as if to say something. The elevator doors slid open with a soft metallic chime. The lobby stretched out before us, vast and polished, the afternoon sun spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows and casting long, cold shadows across the marble floor. "Jane." Lincoln's voice was sharp, a sudden crack in his carefully maintained veneer of indifference. He took a step forward, his hand twitching as if to reach for my wrist. I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. "Have a wonderful afternoon, Mr. Lincoln." "Director," I said, my voice as smooth and untroubled as a still lake. I stepped out of the elevator, my heels clicking rhythmically against the stone. Behind me, the silence in the elevator was deafening. I could practically feel the confusion radiating from my colleagues. The director, completely oblivious to the sudden drop in temperature, nervously chuckled. "Well, she's always been a bit focused on her work. Right this way, Mr. Lincoln." I walked straight to the HR department. There was no tearing at my clothes, no dramatic sobbing in a bathroom stall. The crushing weight that had sat on my chest for the past 3 years, the exhausting, breathless pursuit of a man who only looked at me when he had nothing else to look at, was gone. In its place was a chilling, absolute clarity. I requested a standard resignation form. The HR manager, a mousy woman named Clara, blinked at me in shock. "Jane? But you're the senior designer. If this is About the Zenith project. I'm sure the director has other. It's personal, Clara, I said softly, signing my name with a fluid stroke of my pen. I'll serve my 2 weeks, but I'd prefer to take my accumulated PTO. Starting tomorrow. Today is my last day in the office. By the time I returned to the design department to pack my things, the gossip had already spread. The office was buzzing like a disturbed hive. When they saw me pulling a cardboard box from the supply closet, the murmurs died instantly. Mia was standing by my desk. She had a mug of coffee in her hand, her posture relaxed, leaning against the edge of my cubicle as if she owned it. As if she owned everything of mine. Throwing a tantrum, Jane? She asked, her voice low enough that only I could hear. Quitting just because you lost one project? I thought you were stronger than that. I placed the box on my desk and began neatly packing my reference books. Excuse me, Mia. You're in my light. Her smile faltered slightly at my lack of reaction. She stepped closer, the sweet, cloying scent of her perfume invading my space. You know, Lincoln told me last night that your design was technically proficient, but lacking soul. He said my design had heart. I guess some people just know how to love, and others just know how to calculate. I paused. I looked up at her. Mia was beautiful, undeniably so, a fragile, delicate kind of beauty that made men want to protect her. It was the same beauty her mother had used to tear my family apart. For years, I had let that face haunt me. Congratulations on the project, Mia, I said, my voice completely devoid of sarcasm. I met her eyes, and I let her see the utter emptiness there. You and Lincoln truly deserve each other. I mean that. Mia frowned, clearly unsettled by my calm. She opened her mouth to speak, but Nora, my intern, suddenly pushed past her. Nora's eyes were red-rimmed. Jane, you can't leave. You're the only one here who actually teaches me anything. The whole structural foundation of Mia's proposal was based on the templates you built last year. It's not fair. Nora, keep your voice down, I warned gently, though Mia's face had already flushed an ugly shade of pink. I reached into my bag, pulled out one of my personal business cards, and slipped it into Nora's pocket. Call me next week. I might need a sharp assistant where I'm going. I picked up my box. Without another glance at Mia, the director, or the office I had poured 3 years of my life into, I walked out. The apartment Lincoln and I shared was a sprawling penthouse in the city center. It was a masterpiece of modern minimalism, decorated in shades of slate, charcoal, and ice white. Lincoln had chosen the interior designer. I had always hated it. It felt like living inside a freezer. I packed 2 suitcases. Only my clothes, my laptop, and my design portfolios. I left the expensive jewelry Lincoln had bought me for our anniversaries, apology, gifts for the late nights, and missed dinners. I left the designer bags. Then, I sat at the dining table and opened my laptop. I drafted a divorce agreement. It was simple. I wanted nothing. No alimony, no division of his assets, no shares in Zenith Group. I just wanted my freedom. I printed it out, signed the bottom, and left it on the kitchen island. Right next to it, I placed my wedding ring. The diamond caught the dim evening light, cold and sharp. It was 8 p.m. when I heard the front door unlock. I was sitting on the sofa in my coat, waiting. I needed to see this through to the end. Lincoln walked in, shrugging off his overcoat. He stopped dead when he saw the suitcases by the door, and then his eyes snapped to me. For the first time since I had known him, Lincoln looked thoroughly unsettled. His usual mask of cool indifference was fractured. He walked slowly into the living room, his dark eyes scanning the space as if looking for a trap. What is this, Jane? He asked, his voice a low, tight rumble. I'm leaving, I said. The papers are on the island. I've already signed them. You can have your lawyers look them over, but it should be straightforward. I'm not asking for a dime. Lincoln stared at me. He looked from me to the kitchen island, spotting the stark white paper and the glittering ring beside it. His jaw tightened. He walked over, picked up the paper, and read the bold heading, Marital Settlement Agreement. He dropped it as if it burned him. You're asking for a divorce because of a business decision? Lincoln's voice rose, laced with a sudden, uncharacteristic anger. Are you out of your mind? Zenith Group chose me as project because it was more marketable. It had nothing to do with Lincoln. I interrupted quietly. The sheer exhaustion in my voice made him stop. Don't insult my intelligence. And please don't insult your own. I stood up, adjusting the strap of my purse. You actively pursued my company for this investment. You specifically requested Mia to be a lead. You sat in that room and looked at her the way you've never looked at me. You spent last night laughing with her on the phone, and then took her to dinner with your college friends while I sat here keeping your dinner warm. Jane, she needed guidance on the pitch. I don't care, I said. And it was true. The realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave, washing away the bitter residue of the past 3 years. I really don't care anymore. You love her. You've always loved her. I was just the convenient, quiet woman who ran your household and warmed your bed while she was abroad. But she's back now. That's not true, Lincoln said, taking a step toward me. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. You are my wife. Not anymore. I looked at him, really looked at him. The sharp jawline, the deep, fathomless eyes that had captivated me for so long. He looked like a stranger. In the elevator today, when they asked if you and Mia were married, you didn't correct them. You panicked when you saw me. Not because you were afraid of hurting me, but because you were afraid I would make a scene and ruin the fantasy. Lincoln opened his mouth, a shadow of genuine panic crossing his features, but no words came out. I'm tired of fighting a ghost, Lincoln. I'm tired of competing with a woman who doesn't even have to try. So I forfeit. She wins. You're hers. I grabbed my suitcases. As I walked past him, he reached out and grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, desperate. Jane, don't do this. We can talk about this. I'll pull the funding. I'll cancel the project. I looked down at his hand, then up into his eyes. If you do that, you're not just a terrible husband. You're a terrible businessman. Let go of me. He slowly released his grip, his expression shifting from anger to a bewildered, hollow shock. He had always been in control. He had always assumed I would be there, waiting, hoping for a scrap of his affection. Without another word, I walked out of the penthouse. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, severing my past from my future. The next morning, I woke up in a sunlit hotel room overlooking the river. For the first time in years, I hadn't set an alarm. I lay in bed listening to the distant hum of city traffic and took a deep breath. My chest didn't ache. My heart didn't race with anxiety about what Lincoln was doing or thinking. I felt terrifyingly, beautifully free. By noon, I had rented a small, airy loft on the Arts District side of the city. It was raw, exposed brick, massive industrial windows, and scarred hardwood floors. It was the antithesis of Lincoln's sterile penthouse. It was a blank canvas. I spent the next week throwing myself into the physical labor of setting up my new life. I bought drafting tables, set up a server for my designs, and registered my own independent firm, Aura Architecture and Design. On Tuesday of the second week, my phone rang. It was Nora. Jane, she said, her voice a hushed whisper. I'm in the bathroom at the office. It's a disaster here. I smiled, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear as I unrolled a blueprint. Good morning to you too, Nora. What's happening? Mia's project is imploding. The contractors from Zenith came in to look at her CAD files. The aesthetic is pretty, but the structural load-bearing calculations are completely fabricated. They asked her to explain her math, and she practically had a meltdown. She tried to blame me. I stopped what I was doing. What did the director say? He's trying to cover for her, but Lincoln's executive assistant was there. They demanded revisions by Friday. Jane, she doesn't know how to do it. She's been asking the IT guy if there's a way to unlock your old archived files. A cold smirk touched my lips. My files were wiped from the local servers, Nora. Legally, I surrendered all company IP, but my personal templates went with me. They can't access them. I know, Nora sounded gleeful. Anyway, I'm quitting. I submitted my notice an hour ago. So, you said you might need an assistant. I need a junior partner, I corrected her. Bring your laptop to the loft. On 4th Street. We have work to do. While Mia was busy drowning in the shallow end of the pool, I was casting a line into the deep ocean. A month later, the city announced an open bidding war for the Verdant Crown, a massive, billion-dollar cultural center to be built in the heart of the metropolis. It was the kind of project that defined careers. Every major architectural firm in the country was submitting a proposal, including my former company, heavily backed by Zenith Group. It was a blind bid. The judging committee, comprised of international architects, and the eccentric tech billionaire funding the project, Elias Thorne, would only see the designs, not the names attached to them. We are entirely out of our league, Nora muttered, staring at the massive 3D model we had been building in the loft for 3 weeks straight. She had dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling. Good, I said, handing her a cup of black coffee. The big firms are going to play it safe. They'll submit generic, glass and steel monstrosities. We are going to give them something that breathes. My design for the Verdant Crown was entirely different from anything I had done. While under the thumb of my old director, it was a sweeping, organic structure that integrated the surrounding parkland directly into the building's infrastructure. It utilized kinetic facades that shifted with the sunlight, and a A central atrium that mimicked a natural canyon. It was risky. It was expensive. It was a masterpiece. As the deadline for the submission approached, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered it. Jane speaking. Silence for a moment. Then a low, familiar voice. Jane. My hand tightened around the phone. Lincoln. How did you get this number? I had changed it the day I moved out. I have my ways. You haven't responded to the lawyers. He sounded exhausted. The cool, detached arrogance was stripped away, leaving something jagged and raw. They sent you the revised settlement. I gave you the summer house. I transferred 10% of Zenith's liquid shares to your name. Why haven't you signed? Because I told you, I don't want your money, Lincoln. I sent the original papers back. Sign those. I'm not signing them, he said, his voice dropping an octave. I came home to an empty house, Jane. You didn't even leave a cent behind. It's been a month. And I asked, genuinely confused. Mia is back. Your college friends are around. You should be thrilled. He let out a harsh, bitter breath. Mia is not who I remembered. I leaned back against my drafting table, looking out the window at the city skyline. I felt a profound sense of detachment, like I was watching a documentary about someone else's life. Lincoln, this isn't my problem anymore. If Mia's designs are failing, hire better engineers. If she's not the angel you put on a pedestal, that's your burden to bear. You bought the ticket. Enjoy the ride. Jane, please. Let's just have dinner. I've realized I made a massive error in judgment. An error in judgment is investing in a bad stock, Lincoln. You chose another woman over your wife, humiliated me in front of my peers, and expected me to smile and bear it. My voice was icy, razor sharp. Do not call this number again. Have your lawyer contact mine. If you don't sign the papers by Friday, I will file for litigation and make the reason for the divorce a matter of public, messy record. How do you think Zenith's board will like that? I hung up and blocked the number. Nora was staring at me, her mouth slightly open. Was that just a ghost? I said, turning back to the model. Now let's finish rendering. The East Wing. The night of the Verdant Crown Gala was the social event of the year. The top 10 shortlisted designs were going to be revealed, and the winner announced by Elias Thorne himself. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my loft. I was wearing a tailored, emerald green silk gown with an asymmetrical cut that left one shoulder bare. My hair, usually tied in a severe bun during my marriage, cascaded down my back in loose waves. I looked sharp. I looked dangerous. I looked nothing like the meek, accommodating wife Lincoln had known. Nora looked like a princess in a navy blue cocktail dress. Are you ready for this? She asked, adjusting her clutch. I've been ready for this my whole life, I replied. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of the St. Regis. As Nora and I walked in, handing our coats to the valet, I immediately felt the shift in the room's atmosphere. My former colleagues were gathered near the open bar. The director was there, sweating slightly in a tight tuxedo. Beside him stood Mia, draped in a pale, pink, ethereal gown that screamed innocence. And standing next to her, looking devastatingly handsome in a bespoke black tuxedo, was Lincoln. He had a glass of scotch in his hand, looking utterly bored as Mia chattered away, her hand resting possessively on his forearm. I didn't try to hide. I walked straight toward the center of the room to grab a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. It was the director who saw me first. His eyes bugged out of his head. Jane? What? What are you doing here? This is an invitation-only event for the shortlisted firms. Mia turned. Her smile froze instantly. Her eyes swept over my dress, my hair, the quiet confidence radiating from me, and a flash of pure, unadulterated envy crossed her face. But it was Lincoln's reaction that was the most satisfying. He froze. The glass of scotch in his hand tilted, spilling a few drops onto his polished shoes. He stared at me as if a dead woman had just walked into the room. His eyes were wide, tracing the line of my neck, the curve of my dress, before finally meeting my gaze. There was a hunger in his eyes that I had never, ever seen when we were married. It was the look of a man who suddenly realized he had thrown away a diamond to pick up a rhinestone. Hello, director. Mia, I said smoothly, taking a sip of my champagne. I completely ignored Lincoln. Lovely evening, isn't it? Jane, Mia said, recovering quickly, though her voice was tight. It's a surprise to see you here. Did you manage to find a job as someone's plus one? Or did you just sneak in to see what real architecture looks like? Nora bristled beside me, but I put a gentle hand on her arm. Actually, a new voice interrupted, smooth and laced with an upper-class British accent. She's here as my guest. Though quite frankly, I'm the one honored to be in her presence. A man stepped up beside me, He was tall, with striking silver-flecked dark hair, piercing gray eyes, and a smile that seemed to know everyone's secrets. He wore a midnight blue velvet tuxedo that should have looked ridiculous, but on him it looked like royalty. The director nearly dropped his drink. And Mr. Thorne. Elias Thorne, the billionaire backer of the Verdant Crown project. Elias slid a casual, protective arm around my waist. I stiffened for a fraction of a second, but Elias gave my hip a reassuring, platonic squeeze. We had met 2 weeks ago during the final interview phase of the blind bid. He had been mesmerized by my design, and we had spent 4 hours drinking coffee and debating sustainable urban development. We weren't lovers, but we were kindred spirits. Elias, I smiled up at him. You're late. Apologies, Jane. The press is a nightmare out there, Elias said before turning his piercing gray eyes to my former colleagues. His gaze landed on Mia, and his smile turned razor thin. Ah, you must be the team from Zenith's backing. The luminous box design, was it? Mia puffed up her chest, shooting a triumphant look at me. Yes, Mr. Thorne. I am the lead designer, Mia. And this is my investor, Lincoln from Zenith Group. Lincoln didn't look at Elias. His dark eyes were fixed on Elias's hand, which was resting comfortably on my waist. A muscle in Lincoln's jaw jumped rhythmically. If looks could kill, Elias's arm would have been severed at the shoulder. Right, Elias said, his tone turning remarkably dry. The luminous box. A glass. Square. Very rectangular. Groundbreaking stuff. Mia's smile faltered. The director began to sweat profusely. Jane, Lincoln suddenly spoke, his voice cutting through the tension like a serrated blade. He took a step toward me, effectively blocking Elias. A word. In private. Mr. Lincoln and I have nothing to discuss, I said, my voice calm and carrying perfectly over the ambient noise of the ballroom. Unless it's regarding the legal documents my attorney sent yours. In which case, you can fax him. Tomorrow. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd forming around us. Mia's face turned white. Legal documents? Lincoln, what is she talking about? Lincoln didn't even look at Mia. He stepped closer to me, his presence overwhelming, smelling of scotch and the cedarwood cologne I had bought him 2 years ago. Jane, please. 5 minutes. I think the lady made herself clear, mate, Elias said quietly, stepping between Lincoln and me. The billionaire's gray eyes were hard as flint. Back off. For a terrifying second, I thought Lincoln was going to punch him. The air crackled with hostility. The cold, indifferent Lincoln was completely gone, replaced by a man backed into a corner, volatile and desperate. Before Lincoln could do something he would regret, the heavy microphone feedback echoed through the ballroom, signaling the start of the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced from the stage. Please take your seats. We are about to announce the winner of the Verdant Crown project. Elias offered me his arm. Shall we, Miss Jane? We shall, I said. I turned my back on Lincoln and Mia, and let Elias lead me to the VIP tables at the very front of the room. As I sat down, I could feel Lincoln's gaze burning a hole into the back of my neck. Let him burn, I thought. The MC went through the formalities, projecting the shortlisted designs on the massive screen behind him. When Mia's luminous box was shown, there was polite applause. It was safe. It was boring. And now, the MC said, opening the golden envelope. The unanimous choice by the committee and Mr. Thorne. The winning firm will not only secure the billion-dollar contract, but will reshape the skyline of our city for a century to come. The room held its breath. The winner is Aura Architecture and Design for their masterpiece, The Living Canyon, lead architect Jane Thorne. Excuse me, Jane. The ballroom erupted. The massive screens behind the stage flared to life, showing my design. The sweeping, breathless curves, the integration of light and nature. It was stunning on the massive displays. I stood up. Nora burst into tears and hugged me. Elias stood up and clapped loudly, beaming with pride. As I walked toward the stage to accept the award, I let my eyes sweep over the crowd. I found my old table. Mia was sitting rigidly in her chair, her face contorted in a mixture of disbelief, horror, and sheer humiliation. The director had his head in his hands. And Lincoln. Lincoln was standing. He was looking at the screen, at the breathtaking genius of the design, and then he looked at me. The realization of what he had lost, not just a subservient wife, but a brilliant partner, a woman of immense value and talent, crashed over him in real time. He looked shattered. I took the microphone, looking out over the sea of faces, and finally let my eyes rest on the man who had broken my heart, and the woman who had tried to steal my life. They say, I began, my voice ringing out clear and powerful through the speakers, that great design requires a strong foundation. But sometimes to build something truly magnificent, you have to tear down the old rotted structures first. You have to clear the debris of the past. I smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. To new beginnings. End of part 1. To continue reading the aftermath, the final destruction of Mia's career, Lincoln's desperate attempts at redemption, and Jane's ultimate triumph, please reply continue.